Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truthsayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jaime Jo Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Hey everybody, it is Jaime Jo Wright here, and I have with me today Kimberly Rose Johnson. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi.
Now, do you go by Kim or Kimberly?
I go by Kimberly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. There are some people who always want to be called Kim, and then there's others who are very specific that it's Kimberly, so.
I just prefer it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will answer to Kim from time to time, but generally speaking, it's Kimberly.
If somebody insists on calling you Kim,
yeah. And
you'll
like
say.
as a kid, people did call me Kim because you don't think to correct people. You just go by what they call you, you know?
Oh, right.
So
right.
anyone who's known me my whole life still calls me Kim.
Oh, funny.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you and I are just meeting for the first time today.
Yeah.
So I will forever and heretofore call you Kimberly. Fun. Well, it's really nice to meet you. It's one of the things I like about doing this podcast is I get to meet even new to me authors and make new friends and such. So it's fun to have you here. And for those listening, we are recording this the day before Thanksgiving. And I think we're both ready for it. Are you ready for Thanksgiving?
I am. Yes. I baked
Okay.
a pie this morning and some bread, and we are, I don't have to worry about the rest. That's all I have to worry about. So.
Yeah. We are hosting here at my house tomorrow a relatively small group for Thanksgiving. So I still need to make the traditional gingerbread cake, which is, it's a recipe from like the early 1900s that has been consistently made in our family. So, and it's always a Thanksgiving treat. So, and then we find a way to make it a Christmas treat too, because we like gingerbread in our house.
Nice. I didn't used to like gingerbread, but then like in the last few years, I've grown to love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of my favorite cookies to make at Christmas time.
Yeah. Those, I mean, I was never even a molasses fan.
Right.
And if you had told me as a kid that molasses was the primary ingredient, I probably wouldn't have even eaten the gingerbread. But now it's like, I want molasses cookies. I want gingerbread cake. I want everything molasses. I'll drink molasses if you just give me a glass. It'd be great.
Wow.
I'm a little weird. All right. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Jamie's attachment to molasses. Kimberly, so, okay, you and I met online, which is where a lot of people seem to meet nowadays. But tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you write. If we were to like accost you in a coffee shop and be like, you're a famous author, but we don't know who you are. Tell us.
Well, let's see. I am an author. I am a mom, a wife, a child of God, a teacher. I'm a lot of different things. I wear a lot of hats. I work at a school. I actually teach piano at a school, and I'm the dean of students. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've been writing screenplays for a couple of years. Well, more than a couple of years, but really focused on it for a couple of years.
Okay.
And yeah.
That's great. That's great. Lots of stuff to keep you definitely busy. When did you get into writing, and when did you publish your first book?
Well, I was later in life.
Okay.
I was an avid reader. Loved to read. And then around age 34, I had this idea for a book.
Okay.
And I started writing and didn't know what I was doing at all. And I actually did what they tell you not to do. I did the vanity press. My dad, he liked the book so much. He's like, I'll pay for that. I'll do that,
Right.
But in the process, that's how I actually learned about American Christian fiction writers and Oregon Christian writers and all of these organizations, and that there's actually books out there that teach you how to write and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Which I had no idea until I started that process. So I've only done it that first book, and I've since removed it, and no one can find it, thank goodness. But
that's one of those books you're like, I wrote it, but you don't need to know that I wrote it.
Yeah, but it was a learning experience,
It is. Yes,
and
it is.
it's what helped me find the world that I needed to find. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't know where to look. When I started writing, I hardly knew how to use the internet. So
Mm.
it's like my husband had to teach me just
Yeah.
how to do email. It's like, that was a while back, and the internet was somewhat new, but I had
Mm-hmm.
no reason to be on it. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, what's the point of the internet?
yeah,
I think it was my mom. It might have been my dad. I don't know. One of them said it's just another passing fancy. It's gonna come. People are gonna get tired of it, and then they're gonna forget about it.
it's funny,
Little did they know
right?
that we would be run by the internet 2 decades later.
Right.
Oh my goodness. So what genres are you writing in then?
I write romantic suspense, mystery, and contemporary romance.
Okay. All right. And how many books have you published?
I have 32.
Wow. So you're quite a prolific writer then.
I haven't written a book in a
Yeah.
couple of years because
Okay.
I felt the Lord guiding me to work on screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my focus has been. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, I'm working on the screenplay right now that I'm going to turn into a book. And it's
Okay.
a Christmas story. So,
Okay.
and those are my favorite to write.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really enjoy the Christmas stories then?
I do. There's just something about writing a Christmas story that I enjoy. In fact, my very first book I sold to Harlequin, Heart Song
Mm-hmm.
Presents, was a
Okay.
Christmas story. And ever
Okay.
since that time until like 2 years ago, I had published a Christmas book every year.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
Fun. Now, is that one of those things where to publish the Christmas book, you have to like write it in the middle of the summer?
a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I would have them done sooner because they were some of them, most of them half at least were traditionally published. So you have to
Okay.
have them in sooner. But
Right.
for the self-published ones that you do yourself, you don't have to have that huge lead.
Right. Like the year between
Yeah.
finishing the book versus publishing it. Yep. Yep. Well, your most recent book is called Found, An Almost Perfect Christmas. So tell us a little bit about that one.
That one takes place in Montana, a small Montana town, and it is about a school teacher and her student. And it's kind of funny because, well, it's a romantic suspense. I'll finish telling you
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
And the dad, he noticed this man comes up to him and kind of, I don't know, he just kind of sets him off. Something's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he acknowledges it. He finds out you're a security guard. Since when's this school have a security guard? Because this is a little country school. Little
Mm-hmm.
country schools don't have
Mm-hmm.
security guards.
Right. No, they
And,
don't.
and so he goes inside and asks the teacher about it. And that just sets off the story. So I wrote the story a couple of years ago, and it's kind of been really weird because at the time I had just moved to Montana to help out
Okay.
my parents.
Sure.
And I had committed to doing this novella with a bunch of other ladies. And I just, I don't know why I wrote this story, but the crazy thing is I'm working in the school that I was imagining, and I didn't even know it existed. That's what's so
Wow.
weird. Yeah, and then like there's a name of a teacher like Miss Veronica in there, and there was a Miss Veronica at our school, and it was freaky. It's just like all these
A little
crazy
deja
things.
vu there. Like, wait, what just happened?
Yes, it was crazy stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a romantic suspense, and there's somebody after um him. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to give too much of the story away. I'm trying to remember back. I haven't read it in a while, and you know how life is when you're a writer.
Oh,
You
right.
move on to the
Yes.
next project and you put that one behind you,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Right.
as I sit here and try to think about it, it's just like, yeah, there's this person who actually wants somebody else, but they're using him to get to this person,
Mm.
and that kind of thing. So it's a fun story. It moves really fast, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed writing that one.
That's good.
And I
I
turned it
like the
into a
fact.
screenplay.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And is it going to be a screenplay of this book?
There is. Yeah, I wrote a screenplay
Oh,
for
you
it.
did. You did.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay. Got it.
I haven't sold it yet, but working on it.
Okay. So, what's the difference between writing a book and writing a screenplay? I think a lot of people get confused as to what's the difference. Like, wouldn't you just take the book and make a movie out of it then?
Well, there's a lot of stuff in a book that just doesn't work on screen.
Okay.
So you have to take those cinematic things that people will engage people on screen. And
Mm-hmm.
this particular story did stay pretty true to what happened. but I want to change some stuff because oftentimes people are like, well, the books are always better than movies. Maybe, it just depends on
Hmm.
what you saw first or what you read
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. This is true. This is true.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter swears that the Harry Potter movies are way better than the books. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, child, but you are not mine.
so she did read the books. Which one did she do first?
She did movies.
Okay.
She did movies. And that was that. I mean, that goes to your argument. That was what made the deepest impression. It was her first impression. I read the books first and I enjoy the movies thoroughly. There's no question. But I'm watching going, oh my gosh, they cut like so much important stuff out of the movies.
Right. But you only get, I mean, nowadays, 90
Right.
pages of a screenplay, which is 90 minutes. So every page is a
Okay.
minute.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why novellas are much easier, but are much easier to convert to a screenplay
That
because
makes
there's not,
sense.
not as much
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So what made you kind of take the leap from writing stories to screenplays? Because I think the other part about screenplay is a lot of it's mostly the dialogue, correct? And less of the description, or am I just completely off base?
No, I mean, you're sort of right. You're not
Okay.
wrong. It's just that you have to have that balance too, because when you read through some screenplays, you'll see these wonderful well, like they'll tell you what the people are doing. I mean, these people are being told what to do. These cameras are being told what
Hmm.
they're seeing, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So you need to have some description in there and create the setting and create the mood with your words too. But you
Okay.
have to use brevity too. You can't just go off like we can do in a book because, again,
Yeah.
90 pages is about what people want these days. And you're not going to have a
Wow.
story if you go crazy with all that other stuff.
No,
So,
I can't imagine telling well, I mean, I realize the Harry Potter movies, for example, are more than 90 minutes,
yeah,
but even then, taking a novel that size, like what, 700 pages, I think, or some was one of her last ones, and turning that into a 2.5 hour screenplay.
that's a
That's
lot.
crazy. That's not,
Yeah.
well, 2 hours would be 120 pages. So that's like,
But yeah, I mean, but you had, like you said, a lot was
yeah,
missing because
yeah,
it doesn't
you
translate.
have to
It's impossible.
just slice and dice. You
Yeah,
can't have a 7 hour movie. Although anyone who's like a diehard Potterhead would be fine with 7 hour movie.
sure. Well, and the other thing I've had to, which I didn't like doing, is like merge characters because of budgets and stuff
Mm,
like that.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I've had to turn two characters into one. And
Into one.
that was like the hardest thing I've had to do because it's like, but I like that person and I like that person and they're not the same person.
Yeah.
That you need to merge in. And when you're told by multiple people, you finally have to listen.
Yeah. Right. I suppose. I suppose. Can't always have it your way. And sometimes the characters like have their specific voices too. And if you like both voices, but you have to merge them, then don't you have to kind of like pick and choose which voice to take too? Because they don't always merge or
You basically have to just cut the character. Like you're choosing which one to get rid of. And you're like,
mm,
this person's going to just have to suffice and they'll have to do what this one may have done too, type thing.
gotcha.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of, they get cut basically.
Yeah. Have any of your screenplays been made into
Not
movies
yet.
yet, or are you still selling them?
Not yet. I'm still pitching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it's I a lot of readers it's good for them to know how much work and time can go into this type of thing. It can be a decades long journey.
Yep. That's what they say is pretty average.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. So cool. All right. So romantic suspense. Now let's talk a little bit about that because you build that into some of your Christmas novels. What kind of suspense do you air toward? I know some people are more like the, NCIS military cops, EMT type suspense, and then other ones are more on a creepier element, psychological. So explain a little bit what you think yours would be like.
Mine are more towards cops in general.
Okay.
I have like some FBI, DEA type stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking, it's cops or like cops who've retired and become security guards or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the found, I think he his best buddy was the law enforcement type person.
Okay.
So yeah, I always have someone like that in those. And
Yeah.
my uncle is a retired police officer, so I use him as my resource.
I was just going to ask, like, I'm starting to dive into some of the love inspired suspense. I have my first one coming out in August.
Cool.
And I was like, man, if I'm going to start doing this regularly, I'm going to need some more resources than just Google to like
Yeah.
verify the procedural elements and what they would do in this, that, or the other situation.
And it's funny whenever you ask a police officer or any kind of a group a question, they're like, well, it depends. There's
Mm-hmm.
never a simple answer. And you always have to
Mm-mm.
give more detail. Like I wrote this book, one of my, let's see, my very first romantic suspense I wrote. It
Okay.
wasn't the first one I published, but it's the first one I wrote. I had a retired, he was everything. He'd done so many different things, state police, DEA. I mean, the litany of, he'd been through it all. And that was the common thing with him. He was like, well, I need more information because it depends all the time. It's just like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So
It really gives you an appreciation though for people who are in like a law enforcement or security or things like that, because one of the things that I've found doing research is that what they are procedurally allowed or supposed to do literally does shift with a small variance in the situation. And you're like, so you can tase in that scenario, but in this scenario, you don't, and it's just like you trying to realize how much they have to keep track of
yeah,
in a split second
yeah,
under high adrenaline, high stress situations. It's
yeah.
amazing.
They really, and they have to know the law so well.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
amazing for
Yeah,
sure.
crazy, crazy. So, if you were to pick one of your books that you think readers should start with or would be the best one for them to read, which one would you pick?
Well, it depends on their genre they like, but
Okay,
my favorite series, it's a hard question to answer. I'm like
it
the
is.
cops now. It's like my
Yeah.
favorite series is my Protection Inc. series, and I have the entire series bundled into one ebook.
Okay.
And that is security guards, like not security guards, but what do you call them? Bodyguards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a group of
Yeah.
bodyguards. And then
Yeah.
they bring in some FBI and
Okay.
that kind of stuff, former military. And
Mhm.
then, like, my favorite standalone is
Mhm.
Edge of Truth, which is a DEA story I wrote that takes place on the ranch in Central Oregon. And that one is an award winning book, which I just
Okay.
adore that book. But
Yeah.
if it was just straight romance, my Wildflower Island series.
Okay. Okay.
So,
And that's a contemporary
yeah,
romance?
yeah, I'm
Okay.
too lazy to write historical. You have to get it right. So,
Yeah, but people could say that about like, military and
well, that's true.
police
You do go,
fiction.
yeah. I guess my passion isn't strong enough for historical to go through the effort. Let's put
Yeah,
it
yeah. That's fair. That's
so.
fair. So when you write contemporary romance then and you steer away from the suspense, what makes you want to do that if you love the suspense so much?
Okay, so my agent at the time when I was first trying to get published, she told me, she says, you need to just write to market. And what she meant by that was just
Okay.
contemporary romance. So
Got
it
it.
wasn't that I wanted to, it was that I was told I had to.
Gotcha.
So I did quite a number of books that way. But when I switched publishing houses, my new publisher wanted me to start putting some elements of mystery and suspense. So it
Okay.
wasn't too many books that I had to write
Yeah.
just contemporary romance. There's like five.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
after that, they all started having either an element of mystery or an element of
Mhm.
suspense, just a little tiny hint.
Mhm.
But generally
Mhm.
speaking, they're contemporary romance. But I still get to satisfy that desire to
Yeah.
put that stuff in there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's always, as a reader, I was always drawn to, like, I didn't mind reading contemporary suspense by any means, or contemporary romance by any means, but I always was drawn to the ones that had another thread of something going
yes,
through. Like, it
same.
didn't have to be the main thrust, but if it was straight up romance and there was nothing else, I always felt like I was still looking for a plot. Like, what's the story about? And then I was actually talking to my grandma about this once because she would read straight up romance. And it was always clean romance, but it was romance. And I asked her one day, I said, "But grandma," I'm like, "what's the plot?" And she goes, "falling in love. That's the plot." And I'm like, "Oh, it's kind of disappointing." Which is so funny because when you talk to people who are like voracious romance readers, they're like, "What more plot do you need?"
Right?
But it's so
Yeah.
funny. Yep. To each his own, I guess, as far as what we like for
It's
reading and
good.
writing.
It's so good that we're all different too.
It
Because
is.
that way, there's a book for everyone out there.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's so important. So where can readers get your books?
All of my books are absolutely on Amazon. Some of them are on christianbooks.com and Barnes and Noble. It just depends on who published them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've written for Harlequin too, like the Love Inspired.
I did. I've got all
Okay.
my rights back for those and republished them myself.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. So that we can still get those through Amazon then
Yeah.
under your republished version.
Yes. They are, they take place in Leavenworth, Washington.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And then, those are fun. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. My
Yeah.
mom and I had the idea of this story, and my mom and I took the train from Salem, Oregon to Leavenworth together. And my husband had
Oh,
family
neat.
there, and they met
Cool.
us at the train station, and it was
Uh-huh.
so neat just to be able to sit down with all of these. I mean, they were like great aunts and uncles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to
Yeah.
sit down and take notes and
Yeah.
listen and get the
Yeah.
feel for this place. It was really
Yeah.
special.
Yeah. Especially when they've lived there like their whole lives. They're not transplants from somewhere else, but they know the culture, the history, that's so cool. Now, it sounds like you're kind of from the Northwest area. You
Yeah,
mentioned Montana. Okay.
yeah.
All
I've
right.
lived in
Yeah.
Oregon, Washington, and Montana.
Okay. All right. So they're all your home states in a way at some point.
At some point, yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. Washington
Which
is,
one does your heart draw toward?
that's a hard question.
That probably is.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I spent the most time in Oregon. I grew up in
Okay.
Oregon.
Okay. All right. So you started out there. I've been to all those states. I like all of them. Oregon's neat. I like the coast.
Oh, it's
I like being
beautiful.
on the coast of Oregon. It's beautiful. But my husband and I spent a lot of time in Montana throughout the years, and we've
Whereabouts?
been getting it. We've been in like Missoula, Kalispell, uh, Helena. I have friends who live in Wolf Creek, so we kind of get all. I mean, Montana's not a small state,
It's huge.
so we're usually from like the middle part of Montana, west and northwest. I haven't really made it to the like northeastern side or anything.
Well, you made it to the side I'm on because
Okay.
I go to Idaho like once a week. It's about an hour's drive. I
Okay.
live in the middle of nowhere, so to go to a
Sure.
grocery store that has a selection, a good selection, you drive an hour, 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is something to be said about that lifestyle that really attracts me. I'm definitely as far away out as we could be type of a person.
Where are you now?
We're in Wisconsin, and we have 40 acres here in Wisconsin, so I live in the woods, but that 40 acres is surrounded by population. It's kind of like here's a little reserve in the middle of population and some rural farm area and stuff. But we took the kids out to the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming this year, and we took our camper and camped out there for a couple weeks. And I was in heaven. My kids were about ready to die without Wi-Fi, and I can't get a text through to my best friend. My daughter was panicking. I'm like, yes, isn't this wonderful?
How are you not used to it though?
I know. And then I turned into the proverbial mother where I'm like, well, when I was a kid, I never got to text anyone. It wasn't even a thing.
Yep.
And so that's always fun. Well, Kimberly, this has been a lot of fun. So readers, you're going to want to check out Kimberly's website at kimberlyrjohnson.com. She's got all her books there. You can subscribe to her newsletter, get to know her, and enjoy getting more books for your bookshelf, because who doesn't want that? Right?
Thank you, Jamie.
This was so much fun to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for today here at Manlet Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.